Hi everyone, this is Paul Cooper with Totes and Notes. It's currently March 31st, and I haven't done a market meltdown in a while, and I wanted to make sure I got one in this week and discuss a few things that have been happening in the market. So let's get started. And this article is Economic Data Weakens, Market Soars. Are we repeating 2008? So here are some of the similarities between what's going on right now and 2008. There's a massive China stimulus, inflates risky assets and commodities. There's poor macro and earnings data, and it's being ignored by the markets, assuming everything will improve. The yield curve has inverted. 15 economies now have 30-year yields lower than the LIBOR overnight rates, and the figures of negative yield debt rise to roughly $11 trillion. Financial repression is an all-time high, while leading indicators point to a growing risk of recession. So we've kind of been talking about this for a while. The markets have definitely been cooling. Companies aren't nearly as profitable. Real estate is cooling. It's slowing down. We're seeing a lot more of the subprime or non-prime mortgages being created and originated. And this all points to probably a recession. The other fact is unemployment has been fairly low lately, but the quality of jobs has remained low as well. So people are working, but most people are underemployed compared to what their education and skill level. This article goes on to talk about Asia and some other parts of the world and how it's coming together. It's a decent article, but those were the high points. So let's move on to the next. All right, our next article, also on Zero Hedges, The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Investment Universe, 20 Stunning Market Statistics. We'll just go over these real quick. It's currently 175 trillion. The first point is there's 175 trillion current value of the global financial assets, 2 times the size of global GDP. And it's, 1990 it was roughly 23 trillion, now it's 175 trillion. So global assets roughly 2 times the size of the global economy, and global assets fell in 2018 from 180 trillion to 175 trillion. The second point is talking about how the tech and e-commerce sectors have accounted for roughly 26% of the total market cap. It's roughly 21% today, which is rivaling the roughly 34% that we had in the 2000 bubble, the dot-com bubble. And in 2006 housing bubble, financials were 26%. And in 2008, during the China oil bubble, energy and material sectors were roughly 24%. So it seems what the conclusion they're trying to draw here is roughly once you get into the mid to high 20s in a sector, that usually indicates the peak of a sector. At least it has been for tech and a few others in recent memory. The third point is 7% of the U.S. treasuries are owned by China, which is the largest of any other country that owns our debt. And another fun fact about that is the U.S. Treasury market is by far the largest government bond market in the world, accounting for 18.4 trillion of debt securities, which is almost 4 of every $10 of government debt outstanding is a U.S. Treasury. That's an interesting statistic right there. Number 4 is just talking about some consensus forecasts that have been happening in the Japan's yield over the past few years and the Japanification of global interest rates. Number 5, I think, is a little bit more interesting. It's the 4 deflationary Ds of excess debt, bank deleveraging, tech disruption, and aging demographics explain the consent undershoot of inflation expectations, the inability of monetarism to boost wages and income. It's a good article. There's a lot of stunning statistics here, quickly followed up. I'm not going to go over them just because it would take too long. But there's some good stuff in here. If you get a chance, just hit the highlights, and you'll probably be surprised with some of the stuff that you see. Our next article is about the Midwest apocalypse. Satellite data show at least 1 million acres of U.S. farmland devastated by floods. No surprise, unless you're living on a beach somewhere. This winter's been pretty brutal. The Midwest has just seen a ton of snow and precipitation, and they've been having a lot of flooding, a lot of cold weather, and it's really, really messed up a lot of the farmland out there. It's going to be probably a rough year for food. Prices are probably going to skyrocket. And so be on the lookout for that. That's about all this article's about, just how weather's probably fairly significantly and negatively affected our food supply for this upcoming year. And it could potentially be years to come. I was also reading that a lot of livestock, especially cattle in Nebraska, died due to freezing and flooding, possibly up to 1 million heads so far. So beef prices will probably be increasing as well. because of that, and then also since food and the grains are going to be destroyed, the cattle feed's going to increase in price as well. So livestock prices are probably going to be pretty significant. And the cost of getting a steak and a burger is probably going to go up significantly as well. All right, this next article was a really big article I wanted to cover, and titled Americans Can't Afford to Buy a Home in 70% of the country. And it's basically just what the title says. They did a study on not quite 500 counties, and a large percentage of them, the people still couldn't afford home ownership in them. Obviously, places like LA, San Diego, New York are going to be incredibly expensive. But even other places that are a little bit more affordable, where it's only roughly 33% of someone's income to own a home, they still can't own a home there. And on top of that, home prices are down, interest rates are very low and reasonable, and wages have been increasing. So that just lets you know how bad things kind of are underneath the surface. If the housing prices aren't sky high and they've actually dropped since last year, and the cost to pay for the financing on a home is fairly reasonable, that lets you know that there's something going on out there. If people don't feel secure enough to buy a home when all the other indicators are pointing that they should be able to, then something's going on. And we've talked about this off and on about how the real estate market is cooling. It's overbought in a lot of areas, and home prices are going to definitely be falling probably within the next 6 months to 2 years, if not a little longer. And our last article that I wanted to cover is Economic Insecurity is Becoming the New Hallmark of Old Age. It's kind of depressing, but it's definitely something we need to talk about. It's time to face it that the country's looming retirement crisis. So if you didn't know, most Americans don't have enough money saved to cover a $1,000 emergency, and then retirement accounts are grossly underfunded. A lot of people don't have any retirement accounts, and then the number of people that do have retirement accounts that have 50,000 or less is incredibly high. People are looking at going into retirement, maybe being able to buy a new car with their retirement funds, and that's it. And that's definitely not going to get you through a lengthy retirement. It's definitely not going to provide the quality of life that I think most people would want or expect. So this means people are having to work longer, maybe never get to retire, or get some type of job during retirement, having to significantly downsize. Here's kind of a bad statistic that's a little bit shocking. Nearly half of all private sector employees in this country have no company-sponsored retirement plan in 2018. The other thing you need to realize is this crisis engulfs all kinds of workers, as stated here. It's not just blue-collar people or the working poor. You have highly skilled technicians, professionals, highly educated people that they either aren't saving money and or don't have a corporate retirement savings plan. Pensions are virtually unheard of nowadays unless you get some type of local, state, or federal pension as a government employee. And then you're seeing things like in Illinois and some other states where the pensions are grossly underfunded, so they're having to increase taxes and reduce benefits. Illinois has been just terrible the past few years. The taxes are sky high. People are leaving the state in droves, and they still just have so many unfunded liabilities when it comes to pension and really just about anything going on there. So you have a lot of people that are in retirement that are drawing from that pension or will be in the next few years, and they're probably going to have to take very reduced payouts due to just not having the money to pay them what they were promised. It's going to be really bad. Get down here. It's talking about how people plan to respond to the crisis. Like I said earlier, they're going to have to work more years, work longer, and it just it's kind of sad. You know, we're living longer and having to work longer. Which makes sense, because generally when Social Security was originally created, people weren't living nearly as long as they are today. So it would make sense that they would either need to contribute more money or contribute longer. Yeah, it's real bad. A lot of people are really going to be hurting because they're not going to get the retirement that they want or deserve due to the amount of insecurity. And then on top of that, having an economy that's going to be cooling and probably slowing down isn't going to help. Because if these people still do have good jobs, they'll probably be the first ones on the chopping block. Granted, you're not supposed to discriminate against people due to their age, it happens. Generally, people in their 40s, especially in their 50s or older, that do lose a job, it takes them much longer to find a similar job or to find a job at all, and it's usually at reduced pay because they're for the same price they could go out and get two entry level workers and train them up. So they're generally some of the first people to go. Yes, they are the most experienced, but if you can bring in two or three people for their salary and also reduce benefits for those people, that's why a lot of the older, more experienced professionals and workers end up losing their jobs first when it comes time to lay some people off for the companies. The article goes on to talk about some other retirement savings protections and other parts of the accounts, different plans and things like that. We don't need to go in all that. It's a good read. I think I definitely hit all the scary points. All right, I think that's going to probably be it for this week's Market Meltdown. And just be very cautious now. We've been talking about it for a while. Just be very cautious in the markets. Be very careful what you buy. If you have some things that you can sell for a profit, talk to your advisors. It may be a good time to get some of that. And don't let April make a fool out of you. And I hope you all have a good weekend. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out to me, and take care.